On the 25th of July, something in this word is already standing at your door, because victory is not being introduced to you as a rumor, but as a verdict that has been waiting for your attention. You may have been trying to call it hope, or timing, or a coincidence that kept repeating itself, yet the tone of this message is firmer than that and gentler than your fear. It says that God has already confirmed what he was doing in the hidden place, and now the loud part of your life must learn to agree with the quiet part that has been true all along. There is a difference between waiting for permission and receiving confirmation, and your spirit has been feeling that difference for longer than your mind has been able to name it. This is not a speech to make you chase something that is far away. It is a call to stand where heaven has already placed your feet. The day may look ordinary around you, with the same room, the same chair, the same unfinished tasks, but the word over you is not ordinary at all. Something has been settled where eyes do not naturally look. Something has been sealed in the unseen before it was ever announced in the seen. And because of that, what comes next is not panic but recognition, not striving but possession, not confusion but peace. Stay with me, because the signs will make sense as the message unfolds. You have felt it in the body before you could explain it in language, in the slight tightening of the chest that came when you remembered what was lost, and in the long breath that left you when you realized you were still here. You have felt it in the shoulders that carried more than they should have carried, in the jaw that stayed held through another difficult day, and in the silence of a room where your own thoughts sounded louder than anyone else's voice. You may have opened your phone and hoped for a message, then closed it again because the waiting itself had become heavy. You may have sat at the edge of the bed and felt the weight of unfinished prayers pressing against your ribs. You may have walked through normal responsibilities while carrying an unusual ache that no one around you could quite see. The body often tells the truth before the mouth is ready to speak it, and yours has been speaking in those small places. It has been attention. You need to prepare now. I put together an exclusive resource for those who feel set apart for something greater, but live surrounded by noise, distractions, and mental overload. This is a 30-day journey that will transform your life. A guided path to armor your mind and prepare for what's coming with daily practices of focus, boundaries, and discipline. Stop negotiating with the noise. Learn to spot distractions before they control you, and strengthen your mind. Also available in an immersive audio version. Over 10 Zuru readers have already transformed their lives through the 30-day journey. Thousands of people have already started this transformation. People like you who are tired of living in the fog. Ordinary people who decided to stop accepting mental chaos. Take advantage of this limited time offer only this month. Access your link just below in the pinned comment, saying that you are not empty, only under pressure. It has been saying that something inside you refuses to surrender to the old ending. It has been saying that the story is not over, even when the night feels longer than expected. That is why this word lands where it does, because God does not waste the aches that made you listen more closely. What has been touching your nerves was not meant to destroy you. It was meant to wake you. This is not random restlessness, and it is not a spiritual accident with no meaning. What has been moving around you is a confirmation that the process was real, the delay was not denial, and the invisible work was not wasted. You are not being asked to invent strength out of thin air, because strength has already been forming in the pressure you could not avoid. You are not being told that nothing hurt, because the hurt was part of the evidence that you were being carried through something larger than your own plan. By the end of this message, you will recognize why the timing feels sharp, why certain doors have stayed quiet, and why your heart has kept turning toward a promise you could not shake off. You will see that the heaviness was not the whole message, only the first layer of it. You will understand why some closures were actually protection, why some pauses were actually mercy, and why your spirit kept refusing to agree with defeat. The word over you is not that you must become someone else in order to win. The word over you is that victory has already been touching your name in places no one could applaud. And when that becomes clear, your stance changes before your circumstances do. Think of an ordinary morning when you moved through your home with little energy but a lot of awareness, noticing the cup on the table, the light on the wall, the unfinished laundry, the quiet in the hallway. You were not in a dramatic scene, yet the inside of you felt as if something significant was taking place just beyond sight. You may have stood by the sink and looked out the window for a moment longer than usual, not because you expected a miracle in the yard, but because your heart was trying to hear what your ears could not catch. In moments like that, the ordinary becomes a witness. The room remains the room, but you begin to realize that the room cannot contain the full size of what God is doing. That awareness can feel small at first, like a candle in a wide house, and yet it is enough to show you where the path is. You do not need flashing lights to know the direction when the quiet has become this precise. Sometimes God confirms victory by making peace settle where chaos used to move freely. Sometimes he confirms it by letting your attention rest on what was previously too heavy to see. Sometimes he confirms it by making your spirit say yes before your circumstances have caught up. That is why the simplest places in your day have started to feel loaded with meaning. The kitchen, the car, the bed, the chair, the pause between chores, all of them can become the place where recognition begins. And when recognition begins, despair loses some of its voice. You have never been weak for feeling things deeply. You have simply been given a sensitivity that can become discernment when it is held with wisdom. Not every person notices the shift in the air when a season changes, and not every heart feels the difference between noise and guidance. But you do. You have noticed when a sentence lands too hard, when a room feels too crowded, when a promise sounds beautiful yet leaves no peace behind it. That is not a flaw to be fixed. It is a responsibility being formed. Sometimes the ones God is choosing to strengthen are the ones who cannot comfortably ignore what others can dismiss. They sense the weight behind a casual conversation, the cost hidden inside a rushed decision, the sadness tucked under someone's smile. That kind of sensitivity can hurt when it is not understood, because it makes you feel the edge of things more sharply than you wanted to. Yet it is also how you begin to tell the difference between what is merely loud and what is actually true. You may have thought you were only tired of feeling so much, when in fact you were being trained to notice with precision. You are not inferior because you do not glide through life untouched. You are being prepared to carry a verdict with care. And when God confirms a victory to a heart like that, he is not flattering you. He is entrusting you. The opposition has been subtle, which is why it has been so exhausting. It did not always arrive as an obvious attack, but as distraction that arrived dressed like urgency, as delay that disguised itself as normal life, as comparison that whispered from the edges of your attention. Some days it came through people who drained what you had barely recovered. Some days it came through inner pressure that made everything feel late at once. Some days it came through the constant pull to explain yourself to people who were never listening for understanding. That kind of pressure can make the soul feel as if it is running with weight strapped to the ankles. You are not imagining the strain just because it is ordinary in appearance. A quiet war can happen in the middle of a very ordinary schedule. A long obedience can be tested by small interruptions repeated enough times to wear down your clarity. That is why your body has been tired in ways sleep does not fully repair. The enemy of your peace often prefers lesser urgencies because they keep your attention busy while your heart slowly loses its center. But God has been meeting you even there. He has been refusing to let the lesser thing become the final thing. He has been preserving your direction while the noise tried to rename it. And the fact that you are still listening means the pressure did not win. When you think about the old story of Joseph, you can feel why it matters here, because he knew what it meant to be marked by a promise before he was ever placed in the position where that promise would make sense. He had dreams while the room around him did not yet agree with them, and then he lived through confinement, misunderstanding, and delay before the purpose became visible. Your life may not look like his in outward form, but the shape of the process can feel strangely familiar. There's a difference between being forgotten and being formed in hidden places. Joseph had to survive the tension of being right about the dream while being unable to prove it in the moment. That is a hard place to live if you need immediate confirmation from people, because the promise keeps you awake while the evidence seems late. Yet the delay was not the cancellation of the dream. It was the corridor that led him to the right room at the right time. Some of what you have called lost time may actually be the architecture of wisdom, aligning things you could never have aligned on your own. You may be standing in your own version of a prison of uncertainty, but that does not mean your name has changed. The dream was not a lie. The pressure was not proof of defeat. The unseen hand was still at work. And in the same way Joseph's path was not broken by the waiting, your path is not being broken by what feels slow. If you keep pretending nothing is happening, you may begin to live like a person who has made peace with a lesser ending. That is the cost of spiritual numbness, not because God becomes absent, but because the heart grows accustomed to smaller expectations. Repeated cycles can become familiar enough to feel normal, and that is how people lose the ability to recognize when a new door is trying to open. The voice of fear can become so practiced that it sounds like caution, and caution can slowly harden into paralysis. You may still be moving, but the movement may no longer be led by hope. You may still be speaking, but the words may no longer carry the same weight. The loss of peace is not always loud. Sometimes it is just the gradual settling of inner noise into the furniture of a life. That is why this word is arriving now, before indifference can rename your sensitivity as weakness. God is not shaming you for the weariness. He is warning you that the soul cannot survive forever on borrowed silence. Something in you must answer the confirmation, or the noise will keep trying to take the place of recognition. What has been confirmed cannot remain ignored without consequence, not because God is harsh, but because truth keeps asking to be received. If even one of these signs has landed in you, if your shoulders dropped at any point in the last few minutes, type the words 888 in the comments. That simple pattern is not magic. It is a quiet confirmation that what was spoken reached the place where you were waiting to hear it. It is a small agreement, but it is real. And sometimes the smallest agreement marks the beginning of the clearest shift. Your fingers typing those words become a witness to the moment when your heart stopped resisting the confirmation and started recognizing it. Come back to me after that, because there is more being revealed under the surface of this first assurance. What looked like scattered pressure is part of a deeper turning, and I do not want you to miss what is moving now. You are not being asked to perform certainty. You are being asked to acknowledge recognition. And when recognition becomes spoken, it gives shape to what fear had kept vague. This is how a hidden confirmation becomes a visible one. This is how the inward yes begins to gather strength. Stay with me, because the root of the matter goes deeper than the visible signs. What has been happening around you is not only about circumstances, and that is why the feelings have been so persistent. The deeper conflict has been around what you believe is allowed to happen next in your own life. Sometimes the issue is not whether God can open the door, but whether you believe you are permitted to walk through it without apologizing for being chosen. Sometimes the battle is not against a person or a moment, but against an old survival pattern that taught you to stay small, stay agreeable, stay quiet, or stay available even when your soul was asking for room. That pattern can wear religious clothing, social clothing, or the clothing of maturity, and still keep you from receiving what was already meant for you. You may have called it humility when it was actually fear. You may have called it patience when it was actually delay born from control. You may have called it discernment when it was actually hesitation shaped by past disappointment. None of that makes you guilty in the simple sense, because many people learn to live that way just to get through hard seasons. But God does not leave you in the pattern once He has started confirming the victory. He begins to expose the roots so that the branches can stop twisting the path. That is why the next movement is not more noise, but a clearer understanding of what has been trying to govern your response. The root has often been control, or the need to keep every outcome emotionally manageable before you will fully trust it. Control can look sophisticated, but it is often just fear wearing a careful face. It asks you to predict every turn, rehearse every conversation, and carry every possible ending before you can rest in the present. That is an exhausting way to live, and it makes even good news feel dangerous because good news introduces vulnerability. You may have noticed how hard it is to receive what you prayed for when you have spent so long preparing for what could go wrong. The root may also be approval hunger, the need to be seen as sensible, strong, or unproblematic before you allow yourself to move. That hunger can delay obedience because the heart keeps asking who will understand before it asks what God said. What is being revealed now is not your failure, but the place where fear has tried to stand in the doorway of trust. The victory cannot settle fully while the old manager keeps trying to run the room. So the Lord is not condemning you for control. He is inviting you out of it. He is showing you that the thing you have called safety may have been a ceiling, and ceilings can feel protective right up until they become the limit of your breath. Your mind has been trying to explain what your spirit has already sensed, and that is why the internal conversation has felt so split. The mind says to wait, calculate, review, and prepare for disappointment. The body responds by tightening, bracing, or going numb. The spirit, however, keeps noticing the same quiet pull toward peace, direction, and a confidence that does not need to shout. This tension can make you wonder whether you are being reckless or wise, but not every unsettled feeling is a warning, and not every calm feeling is carelessness. Sometimes anxiety borrows the language of caution, while discernment speaks more softly but with greater clarity. You may be sitting in a car after a difficult conversation and feel your chest tighten before you can even finish the thought. You may be standing in the kitchen and sense that a decision is off before you have all the reasons sorted out. The body reacts quickly, the mind builds arguments, and the spirit is asking for a quieter kind of attention. This is why spiritual confirmation often feels like relief more than adrenaline. It is not always dramatic. It can come as the strange settling that makes you realize you can breathe again. That breathing is not nothing, is often the sign that your inner world has recognized the truth before your outer life has caught up. Some rooms keep a memory of who you used to be, and when you enter them after God has begun changing you, the old atmosphere can try to pull you back into the former role. Certain conversations do the same thing. They ask you to explain the new conviction in old language, or they reward the version of you that no longer fits what is emerging. You do not need to judge everyone in order to notice this. Discernment is not suspicion, and boundaries are not bitterness. But it is wise to recognize when a place requires you to shrink in order to feel accepted. It is wise to notice which people hear your growth as if it were a threat. It is wise to see the difference between company that strengthens your peace and company that quietly drains it. Some of what you have been calling fatigue may actually be resistance from environments that no longer match your assignment. That does not mean you must flee every room or distrust every voice. It means you must stop confusing familiarity with alignment. The listener you are becoming cannot keep feeding on what the old self needed to survive. And once you begin to see that clearly, your choices become quieter but stronger. You start to protect the yes that God is forming in you. The strategy against your progress has not been to destroy everything at once. It has been to tire you, delay you, confuse you, and fill your day with lesser urgency until the main matter loses its place. It has tried to make you answer everything except the thing God is actually highlighting. It has tried to turn direction into noise by making every small task feel like the main story. Sometimes the pressure shows up as a flood of messages, expectations, and loose ends that never quite close. Sometimes it shows up as inner accusations that make even simple obedience feel suspicious. The purpose is to keep you occupied enough that you stop noticing the confirmation growing inside you. Yet the very fact that this feels familiar is part of what exposes it. A pattern loses some of its power when it is named without fear. You do not have to dramatize the opposition to understand it. You only have to stop giving it the authority to define the day. God has been interrupting that strategy in quiet ways, making you pause where you used to rush and rest where you used to overextend. That interruption is mercy. It is how he keeps your feet from entering the wrong room simply because the noise was loud. This is the threshold where you stop negotiating with what has already been revealed. You are allowed to do that. You are allowed to quit asking the same question when the answer has already been repeated in your spirit. You are allowed to stop treating confirmation like a suggestion and begin receiving it like direction. The moment you do that, your inner posture changes. What once felt like uncertainty begins to look like a path. What once felt like danger begins to look like a doorway. You do not need to manufacture confidence to cross that threshold. You only need to stop making peace with the old hesitation. The old bargain said you could keep your safety if you kept your obedience small. The new truth says you were not made to live half awake in the edge of your own promise. There is a point when hesitation stops being humility and becomes avoidance. And that point may have already arrived. So the next movement is not about more analysis. It's about recognizing the shape of what has been waiting for you to step forward. The image that comes now is not separate from the message. It is the message becoming visible. The whole thing feels like a sealed vessel that has been kept in a hidden place, not because it was rejected, but because it needed the right season to be opened. For a long time, the lid looked like delay. The silence looked like absence. The waiting looked like being overlooked, yet the seal was never the same as a sentence of death. Sometimes it is simply protection before timing. You have lived enough to know that not every closed thing is against you. Some closed things are preserving what would be damaged too soon. The vessel has not been empty. It has been contained. The promise has not disappeared. It has been held. And because it has been held, the pressure around it has not been wasted. Think of a jar kept in a cupboard where dust cannot reach it, or a letter folded carefully until the moment it is needed, or a lamp kept covered until the room is ready for light. The image is not about hiding forever. It is about readiness. What was sealed was not denied, it was guarded. That is why your life has felt at times like waiting in the dark with a certainty you could not yet display. The hidden thing has been real even while it remained unseen. And the confirmation you are receiving now is the sound of the seal beginning to matter. You may even remember moments when you sensed something precious in you was being kept from premature exposure. People around you may not have understood why you pulled back, why you became quieter, or why some forms of attention felt more like pressure than blessing. The sealed thing in your life was not only the promise itself, but the shape of the person who would one day carry it well. A jar is not only about what it holds, it is also about the integrity of the container. A letter is not only about the words inside, it is about the timing of the opening. A covered lamp is not only about darkness, it is about the purpose of the light when it arrives. You have had to learn that being unseen is not the same as being unimportant. In fact, some of the most important work happens where no one can rush it. That hidden season may have shaped your motives, refined your patience, and protected your heart from being spent too early. It may have taught you how to sit with God when nobody was clapping. It may have trained you to carry a quiet yes before the world ever gave you a platform. This is why the seal mattered so much. It was not the end of the story. It was the safeguard around a becoming that needed time. What tried to keep the vessel closed was not always obvious, because the resistance often came in the form of reasonable concerns, practical delays, and inner hesitation. It told you to wait one more season, then one more week, then one more answer, until the waiting itself started feeling safer than the opening. Sometimes the pressure came from voices around you that preferred the old version of you because it was easier to predict. Sometimes it came from your own mind, which knew the comfort of the known, even when the known was too small. That is how a seal can become both protection and test. It protects the contents and it tests the readiness of the one who wants to open it. The opposition inside the metaphor is not a villain in a costume. It is the accumulated force of fear, habit, and timing misread as truth. Yet even that opposition has served a purpose by revealing how deeply you have been attached to containment. Some things must be kept until the heart learns not to fear their release. That is why the pressure mattered. It was not only keeping you in, it was teaching you how to hold what was being prepared. And what God prepares does not stay sealed forever. The right hand opens what the right season has secured. Then the movement begins. And it begins quietly at first, like a lid that no longer resists the breath inside it. The sealed thing does not explode, it stirs. The covered lamp does not blaze immediately, it begins to breathe light into the edges of the room. The letter does not become less real when it is opened, it becomes readable. The jar does not lose its purpose when the seal is lifted, it finally reveals what was protected. This is the kind of opening that happens when confirmation meets readiness. You may not feel dramatic, and that is all right. Sometimes the most important turns are recognized in the body before they are explained in the mouth. The chest loosens, the shoulders settle, the mind stops circling as hard. The heart begins to admit that what was waiting has not been lost. You have not been imagining the shift. You have been standing at the edge of it. The seal was not forever, and the waiting was not meaningless. What was hidden is now moving toward visibility. What was guarded is now asking for your consent. What was quiet is now becoming a presence you can no longer dismiss. And because of that, the old story of defeat loses credibility. It cannot hold when the sealed thing begins to breathe. If the image I have been walking with has reached the place where you know the waiting was never empty, type the words "Eu vejo isso" in the comments. Let that recognition settle where the seal used to hold the pressure. It is a small sentence, but it carries the weight of seeing clearly, and seeing clearly is often where obedience begins. Come back to me after you write it, because the next step is not just noticing the opening but choosing how you will stand inside it. Something has moved from hidden to known, and the heart must now learn not to retreat from what it asked God to reveal. The confirmation is not fragile. It can hold your acknowledgement, and your acknowledgement helps you stop treating the open thing like a rumor. This is where the inner record becomes permanent. This is where the heart stops negotiating with what it has already seen. Stay close, because the return from this point is not to fear, but to practice. The return is not to performance, and it is not to earning what was already confirmed. You are being brought back to what was always simple before fear complicated it. A quiet yes is still a yes. A steady yes is still a yes. A yes spoken in the middle of uncertainty can still be stronger than a loud promise made without peace. What God is returning to you now may look less like spectacle and more like clarity, less like a trophy and more attention. You need to prepare now. I put together an exclusive resource for those who feel set apart for something greater, but live surrounded by noise, distractions, and mental overload. This is a 30-day journey that will transform your life. A guided path to armor your mind and prepare for what's coming with daily practices of focus, boundaries, and discipline. Stop negotiating with the noise. Learn to spot distractions before they control you, and strengthen your mind. Also available in an immersive audio version. Over 10 Zuru readers have already transformed their lives through the 30-day journey. Thousands of people have already started this transformation. People like you who are tired of living in the fog. Ordinary people who decided to stop accepting mental chaos. Take advantage of this limited time offer only this month. Access your link just below in the pinned comment.